Right now we're preparing the Anniedale School to be moved to a new location. We're just getting ready to move the wheels into the back of the building. First thing we do, we have to come and take a look at the building, make sure it's structurally sound. We then check the route to where it's going to go to make sure that there's no bridges or obstacles that would prevent us from moving it. We would then slide steel underneath the joists that are holding up the main floor, and those steel beams would support the building. Once the building's lifted up, we'll then hook a truck to the front of the building so it can be rolled out in the next couple nights to be moved.
The first non-Indigenous migrants arrived to the Surrey area well before it became a municipality in 1879. By 1882, Surrey had grown large enough to build its first school. Originally named the Surrey School, it was soon renamed Clover Valley. With the completion of the new Westminster and Southern Railway in 1891, new settlers flooded into Surrey. In that year, the population grew to 1,600, and 6 new schools were built, including Anniedale. The provincial government paid $660 for the construction of the one-room schoolhouse. Built by Sam Edge of Port Hammond, it opened July 15, 1891, at what is now 96th Avenue and 182nd Street. In its first year, it had just 13 students, ranging in age from 4 to 15.
My father came out to the coast here about 1883. My oldest brother and I, we started to go to the Anniedale School. I started to go to school here in 1896. I was 5.5 years old. They had to have so many pupils before they could hire a teacher. By the way, the teacher got the large sum of $50 a month.
I had to start at that school when I was 5 years old in order to, they were going to close it. Well, the school was small, you know, and I imagine it would hold 18, 20, it'd be filled right up. Of course, it never was in my day, 12, 14, sometimes it was down as low as 8 or 9, you know. There was a cast iron heater in the middle of the room. The wood was out in the back, you know. Kids would carry the wood in. The teacher told us to somebody go get an earful of wood, keep steam up. We had our own games we used to play. It was a good life.
Anniedale was the only school for miles around. Back then, Surrey was mostly forested, and kids would have long, arduous journeys through the wilderness to get to school.
We had to walk 2 miles, and sometimes we'd have snow up to our knees. And we used to walk along the railroad track there, and Mother used to worry about us. There was a train going behind us when we were going. I told her she didn't need to worry. I got off the track, and I even jumped the ditch and got over to the wire fence when the train was coming. And the old engineer used to wave at me and try and reassure me, but I was afraid of the old train. But we had quite an adventure there.
We were 2.5 miles from that school. We had to go up a skid road, and in one place, I remember my younger sister and myself, the skids were so high that we would have to put our lunch pails on the skids, then climb over and do that with several of the skids. One boy used to walk from there across to the river on this side and take the boat, row across there, and then he would have to walk probably 1.5 miles on the other side to this Anniedale School.
And there was one year we had an influx of caterpillars, I think it was about 1909. And on the railroad tracks, every inch of the railroad track was covered with migrating caterpillars crawling. When we used to walk to school barefooted along the railroad track, we'd be green, with caterpillar right up to our ankles. We were walking on a carpet. There was another old fellow, and he was clearing land all the time, and he was doing a lot of blasting. These rocks and roots and chunks of stumps dropping in the schoolyard, you know. He'd never get away with it today, but we thought nothing of it. I do remember one afternoon we were walking home from school, and my brother was just younger than I, and one of those blasts went off in the field and off to the left, and one of the boys hollers, "Jump, Johnny!" That's to my brother. And he just didn't question me, just jumped. On a root, I guess the size of that chair, landed right on the ground, right behind where he'd been. It had been up in the air maybe 50 feet. If the other lad hadn't said jump, he'd have got that right on top of his head. But they seemed to think nothing of that those days, you know. He'd be prohibited from doing that today.
No one is quite sure who the school was named after, but the leading theory points to Annie Bickerton Stanley. She was the daughter of Elizabeth Pooley, who owned the school's land before it was donated to the Surrey School Board in 1929. Annie bears the last name of her father-in-law, Lord Frederick Stanley, the namesake of both Stanley Park and the Stanley Cup. The first schoolhouse closed in 1954 when the new Anniedale opened at 176th Street at 96th Avenue. The building was vacant until 1975 when it was moved to its second location next to the new school. While it was used as a learning center for a short while, it was abandoned since the 1990s until the building found its new home at the Museum of Surrey.
Once we get to the location, we'll then use wood blocks to build a crib so we can lower the building into that position. And once it's lowered into position, they will then build the foundation underneath the building. Once the foundation has been built, we'll lower it onto the foundation and remove all the steel and cribs that were supporting the building.
Thanks to the Surrey Heritage Advisory Commission and city staff, Surrey's oldest remaining one-room schoolhouse is no longer forgotten, giving visitors a unique glimpse into the city's pioneering history.